Hello, all of you, and welcome to part 2 of circulatory system. Here we go. So now we have to look at the heart with a whole lot more detail. Let me get my pen out here. And notice that again, they've drawn this side of the heart, which remember is the right, because it's not your right, it's the patient's right, and you're facing somebody and you can see their heart. You see right through their chest and you're seeing their heart. So this would be their right. And this red part here would be their left. And so what we're going to have to do is look at this pump and look at the chambers. There's 4 chambers, 1, 2, and then 3 kind of hidden here, and 4. We're going to look at chambers, we're going to look at valves, and we're going to look at vessels. So we'll start out with the chambers. I want you to know the 4 chambers and be able to identify them on a heart. So if we simplified this picture, like the one here, you would have the right atrium and the right ventricle, and the left atrium and the left ventricle. So remember, blood is coming into the right side of the heart, coming into the right atrium first, next to the ventricle, and then shoots out to the lung. Comes back from the lung into the left atrium, down into the left ventricle, and then shoots out to the body. So the order is always atrium, ventricle, and then out. Atrium, ventricle, and then out. Okay? So those 4 chambers. The next thing we're going to have to look at is valves. Think of this pump. Every time you pump something, you need to have an entryway and an exit way, and you can't, if you're trying to pump into a certain direction, you don't want that fluid to go right back where it came from. So you need to have something that blocks that original entryway. And that's what a valve does. So in this diagram, you can only see 2 of them, the tricuspid and the bicuspid, also called the mitral. And so imagine blood coming from the right atrium into the ventricle, and then you squeeze the heart. Okay, that's how you pump. You're going to pump it down in the bottom here. And if you squeeze the bottom, then that blood is going to want to go right back up here again. And at the same time, it's going to want to go right back up here again. And you cannot allow that to happen. So what's going to happen is that these valves that are shown here, they look like little parachutes actually, but they're dangling here. They're going to have to close. So if we close here and we close here, then none of that blood is going to go backwards. I'm going to get the eraser here and erase the arrow. Erase the arrow. There we go. There is no way that that will be able to return back that way because these will close. And instead then it's going to shoot out the vessel that is taking the blood on this side to the lung and on this side to the rest of the body. Okay, and there's another set of valves that I'll show you in a little bit. So for now, you have the 4 chambers. You need to know those 4. Now let's look with more detail at the valves. The names of these valves are tricuspid and bicuspid, tricuspid, bicuspid. So the way to remember that, if we're always looking at the right side of the heart first, is you try before you buy. Try before you buy. So this is tricuspid, the one that's going to close off here, and the one that's going to close off on the other side is the mitral or the bicuspid. So those valves are going to prevent blood from going back in where they came from the atrium. They're very amazing to look at, and they're like a little tent or a parachute that are anchored. Do you notice this anchoring here? They anchor down at the bottom so that they don't just, from the pressure inside the heart, flop right back in here again. So you have to anchor those down on this side too, and then the pressure of that fluid getting caught under this umbrella or parachute is going to hold it there and not allow it to go back in. Okay, so that's one set of valves. We're going to group these two together, the tricuspid and the bicuspid. And then the second set of valves, imagine this blood, it came in through here, and then it came down through here. Now it's going to want to exit through this vessel here. And it does. It shoots out through there. And then the heart relaxes. So if it relaxes, this blood is going to want to trickle all the way back down where it came from again. So, from chamber 1 to chamber 2, we have to close the gate. We put a valve. From chamber 2 to vessel, we have to close the gate and put a valve there. Same thing on the other side of the heart. Going from the ventricle, it's going to shoot out the aorta here. And at the base of the aorta, I should just change this pen color to black. At the base of the aorta, which is hiding behind the one I showed you here, are these little valves, right? And here we had them on this side. And they look different. They're like a teacup. And blood can scoot in between that teacup and shoot out this way. But when it tries to come back down, it's going to get caught in those little cups there. And I'll show you better pictures of that. Okay, so again, tricuspid from chamber 1 to 2, bicuspid, chamber 1 to 2. Now, this second set here, the pulmonary and the aortic, pulmonary means lung. So the pulmonary is the one that is going to close, preventing the blood that's shooting off to the lung, preventing it from coming back into the ventricle. So that's the pulmonary on the right. And the aortic, which is going to prevent blood from returning to the ventricle from the aorta. So aortic is the one that is we're going to put B here for is leading to the rest of the body and distributing that blood to the body. Okay, 4 valves, you need to know those. Tricuspid, bicuspid, pulmonary, and aortic. These are actually, because they're little cups like this, they're called semi-lunar because they look like little half moons. Notice the little moons? So they're called semi-lunar valves. Here I've drawn it again, the right side of the heart. We have blood is going to be coming in here and coming down into the ventricle, and then you squeeze. If you squeeze, you don't want it to shoot right back up, so you put a valve right there, and that is the try before you buy, tricuspid. Blood will continue on going, and now the only place it has is to shoot out towards the lung. And so now this relaxes, and it's going to want to trickle all the way back again, and we don't want that. So we have another valve that's right there, and that's the pulmonary. Okay, 2 valves on that side. Same goes for this side. I'm coming in. Sorry, that's an error. Let's erase that really quickly. So we have blood coming into the right atria. And it's coming in through here. And it's going to come down and down into here. So when this squeezes, we want to be able to close the mitral or the bicuspid, preventing backflow up this way, and instead making blood shoot out the aorta. Then the heart relaxes, and this blood wants to come all the way back, shooting back down. That won't work. So we have the semilunar valves at the base of those vessels. So just remember that the aortic, which is this one, and the pulmonary are at the base of the major vessel that's going to shoot out of that ventricle. Those are your valves on the right and on the left. If you want to look at pictures of them, here are the little parachute-like shape of the tricuspid and the bicuspid and the anchor. And when this blood shoots up here, it fills it, it closes like an open umbrella of a parachute, and these anchors are going to be taut. They're going to be holding that down and not allowing blood to shoot out. It can come down like this arrow shows, but now it's showing this arrow hitting it from the inside and coming back down because it cannot cross that barrier. Okay. The pulmonary and aortic valves look more like these teacups or half moons, semi-lunar. And what happens there, this is a vessel here that's been opened up for you. So imagine this is the cut side. The cut side, those two would have joined in a circle, but we've cut it and opened it up to show you. And what usually happens is blood can shoot out between these when it's moving. But if it were to try and come back in this direction, it would be caught in these teacups and it would not be able to continue its path on down. Pulmonary and aortic, they look the same. At the base of the pulmonary artery and at the base of the aorta. Okay, know the vessels. So which vessels do you need to know? The first thing you need to know is that by definition, a vein is a vessel that arrives at the heart, regardless of whether it's oxygenated or not. If it's coming into the heart, it's a vein. If it's leaving the heart, so I tried to make this analogy for you here, arteries part. So leaving, arteries are leaving. And the ones that you need to know are coming into the right side of the heart, superior vena cava, and the pulmonary veins are also arriving at the heart, and these are arriving on the left side. The arteries that are parting is the pulmonary artery on the right, and this on the left. So let's go right and left. With pictures, let's do it with pictures. So you have superior vena cava arriving to the right side of the heart. It's bringing that blood in. Blood is coming down in here, and then it's going to shoot out, and it's going to leave through the pulmonary artery. Arriving is a vein, leaving is an artery. So superior vena cava coming in, pulmonary artery leaving. That's what happens on the right. On the left, let's do the same thing. Pulmonary veins are arriving. So they're coming in, blood is coming down, it's sort of swirling around in here, and then out this other vessel. And that vessel is the aorta. So aorta is an artery, and this is veins. Okay, so if you made a simple drawing for yourself like this, then you would remember what comes in, what goes out, what comes in, what goes out. This is a much better picture than my little scrawny ones, and it has it all complete, both of them together. And notice it, let me go back a little bit. I made these separate, but really this whole left side is sort of slides under this. So this aorta would be hiding behind the pulmonary artery here. So let's join. It's like joining these two now. If I got this one closer and that one closer and sliding the red under the blue a little bit, and that's what you would have. So, excuse me, you have the right atrium and the right ventricle. Coming in, superior vena cava. It goes past this valve. Which valve is that? Try before you buy. So it's the tricuspid. come into the right ventricle. Then you shoot out this vessel, pulmonary artery. And at the base of the pulmonary artery, pulmonary valve, teacup valve. And we're done. Now let's look at the other side. The other side, pulmonary veins coming in to the right atrium, going past the bicuspid valve down into the left ventricle. And then it's going to shoot out. See how it's hiding there? There's the valve at the base of the aorta that is sort of hidden behind, and then blood will shoot out this way. So there you have the chambers, the valves, and the vessels. You need to know those names. This is just more diagrams showing you, this the blood coming into the right side of the heart, and it's just illustrating here that it's coming from all the other tissues. So it's coming from the kidneys and from the liver and from the intestines, all this blood that was already given up its oxygen, and it's coming back into the right side of the heart here, and there it's going to be pumped over to the lungs, and the lungs are going to load up, and they'll load up with oxygen. They'll come back to the left side of the heart, and now I'm leaving in red, and I can oxygenate these organs all over again. And then when they have no oxygen, it goes back to the right. So the more you look at these different pictures, the easier it is to understand that pathway of the blood. Okay, one more time there for you to look at it and what these valves look like. One other important item that we need to look at is the electrical activity of the heart. So you know that the heart is pumping, but in order for it to pump, it needs an electrical signal telling it to do so. And the cool thing about the heart is it has its own electrical signal. It doesn't need to come from the brain. Your brain is not sending that signal like it does to your muscle. It does it on its own. And how does it do it on its own? Because it has its own cells that are able to create this little current. Okay? Hence all those horrible murder, crazy movies that you might have seen where there's a animal heart that's on a table that's pumping on its own. It can actually do it, or beating on its own, and it can do that. Horrible. So here in the right atrium, I've cut away at it here, there are these cells, specific cells that are called pacemaker cells, and they are able to create current, an electrical activity. And so here it's showing it, how that electrical activity goes from all these yellow regions. So this is it's called an SA node, the pacemaker node, and it radiates to the other atria, and then it comes down this middle here in yellow and back up again. And so this is electrical activity. Think of it like a wire that starts out here, hits the middle, comes down the middle, and then comes up the sides, and it's this shock, and that electrical shock that reaches in that order, it starts out here, radiates to here, and then comes down the middle, will create the contraction of your heart. So your heart contracts in that order. First the atria contract, and they squeeze blood down to the bottom. Then the ventricle contracts, and it squeezes blood out those vessels that I explained to you. So this in yellow, remember, is the electrical activity. It's this automatic current that goes through the heart in that rhythm that you have. That's going to cause lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And it does it for 90-something years, if you let it. That's where we're going to stop this lecture. I would want you to see if you can describe the path of blood through the heart's chambers. What chambers is it going through? What valves is it going through? towards the lung into the body tissues. If you can follow one drop of blood all the way through, then you're really learning all that vocabulary. Okay, thanks for listening. Great, we're going to cut this off now.